All right, well, welcome everyone. I'm excited. This is the end of a long day here at Connect Week 2021, the beginning of the day for some of our panelists who are very out of town, but welcome everyone for joining us. And this is going to be a great conversation. We are going to be joined by three industry experts, and we're going to be talking about consumer wearables, the trends of 2020, and we're going to also be joined by an influencer, a voice from the consumer side who has personally tested most, if not every single one of these devices. So this will be a fun conversation for all. So I'm going to introduce very briefly our panelists. I'm going to start with Dr. Stephen Barrie, naturopath, PhD. Thank you for joining us. Very
My
briefly.
pleasure.
Yes, very briefly, Dr. Barrie, internationally recognized physician, clinical medical researcher, lecturer, inventor, author, and entrepreneur. I already feel bad about myself already, but that's okay.
That's in my spare time. Right?
On your spare time, only on the weekends. For the past 3 years, you're an executive with Biohacking, an artificial intelligence healthcare company. Most of us, I think, know what this is. This company is doing phenomenal work developing diagnostics and therapeutics for chronic disease based on the body's expression of messenger RNA. Also, very briefly, founder and former CEO and chairman of Genova Diagnostics, the world's largest functional medicine clinical reference laboratory, started in 1986. Talk about a forerunner. This is going to be fun. So thank you, Dr. Barrie, for joining us. I'm also going to introduce Samir Santaki. Samir, I don't know where you are. I hope you're joining us here soon. But Samir, there you are. Thank you for joining us. Samir is the co-founder and CEO of Biostrap, a healthcare wearable platform offering the world's most advanced science-based technology to improve global health, data collection through clinically validated wrist-worn device. Biostrap utilizes machine learning, artificial intelligence to provide comprehensive, individualized, and population-level insights into one's physiology. We're also going to be talking about sleep, meditation, activity, brain health, and heart health. So this is going to be so exciting. Samir, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me. And it's good to see you again.
Oh. Yes, it's good to see you again too. Post lockdown.
Post-COVID.
I'm so excited. Post-COVID. Yeah. Oh, well, thank you for being here with us. Also, we're going to have Molly Downey, RDN, LDN. Molly, wherever you are, we'll see. We'll wait a second for you to join us here. Let's see, this is going to be, you're there somewhere. I know you are because we were talking backstage, but I'll already introduce. There you are. Hi, there you are. Perfect. And getting in focus. I like it. Thank you for joining us. So registered dietitian nutritionist, licensed dietitian nutritionist who specializes in glucose control. We're going to be talking all things glucose, metabolism, weight loss, graduated from Indiana University, currently working as a dietitian at Nutrasense, a tech company which leverages continuous glucose monitors as a way to optimize diet, health, and overall being. One of the also just amazing new techs out that I was not even aware of a year ago, and now it seems like it's everywhere. So thank you for joining us. Yes. And then last but not least, we've got Katie Moore, Katie Type A. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm thrilled to be part of this conversation. And I hate the word influencer. I really just think of myself as just like a self-experimenter, but it's true. I have literally tested all of the things that we're going to be discussing today. So I'm really happy to be part of this conversation.
I'm so glad you're here. And we're going to be talking about your YouTube channel, all the experiments on yourself that you've done and what you've shared. And so I'm really, really excited that you're here with us, and we're going to be having you just such an important voice in this conversation. So thank you. Thanks for being here. All right. Well, so we're going to begin this conversation. I'm probably going to do this. If we can spend maybe 5 minutes, I'm going to let you in your own words introduce what's your company's target service in your own words, not in ours, not what we think you are, what you're doing, but what is your objective? What is your mission? What are you focusing on now? And then, what's your main objective for 2022? So if it's okay, I'm actually going to probably reverse the order here a little bit. I'm probably going to start with Molly. So Molly, can you just share a little bit about what Nutrasense is doing, what your main target is, and what 2022 may look like before we start getting into the questions?
Absolutely. So my name is Molly, and I am one of the dietitian managers at Nutrasense. And we, again, as you said, we leverage continuous glucose monitors. The way we're doing it is we're using it as a more preventative approach to optimize a person's health and well-being. So there's so many different variables that you can see through glucose data. It's not just the foods that we're eating, but you can see different responses to exercise, sleep, stress. All these different variables play into the glucose data. So again, it's just providing more of that individualized biofeedback that can, promote behavior change and just provide more personalized insight. So everyone responds differently to different foods, and there's so much, generic or generalized information out there. And our goal is to just help our members optimize their health based off of, how they're responding to specific things. And I think the glucose data is just such an impactful tool for promoting this behavior change and actually, providing better insight to all of these things. So, I'm the biggest advocate for it. I've discovered so many things about my personal body and, so many things going on. So I just think it's it's very revolutionary, and it's an amazing tool for anyone to use. And it's not just, again, I think a lot of people think of blood glucose and they form that, correspondence with diabetes, which is a disease state. But we're using it more so to actually prevent, a disease progression, down the road. And we're trying to identify more yellow flags and working to optimize those through, behavior modification and anything that we can do to provide more optimal responses and hopefully, promote longevity and delay disease prevention or progression. So,
which I love. Now, just quick question. Are you getting is somebody getting a shot every 10 seconds? Is that how that works? Just tell me there's not a shot every minute.
No, I'm
okay.
I'm scared of all that too. Basically, you apply the sensor onto the back of your arm, and it continuously picks up your blood sugar data over a 24-hour period.
Wow. Perfect.
They work 14 days at a time. So it's, again, like if anyone is familiar with glucose and has done any sort of biohacking, if you're using just a glucose meter, which you can get just at any drugstore, basically you're just getting one single snapshot in time. So if you do a finger prick or something, that's probably would scare you and you don't want to do that.
So and it's one data point. I'm like, oh my goodness, how many am I going to need to start to see a trend here, right?
Exactly.
So that. Yeah.
Totally.
And fun fact, we're such nerds in my office in Pasadena that after lunch, a team lunch, we would actually sit there and we would poke our fingers and compare who had the highest glucose levels or the lowest. Right. Yeah. And this was our competition on a random Wednesday afternoon. So
I love that so much.
Just wait until we all get Nutrasense. So
yeah, I used to do that. Cool. I used to have that at my house a couple summers ago. My whole family would come over. You couldn't come to my house without getting your finger pricked and seeing who had, the highest blood sugar levels. And then of course I was introduced to the continuous glucose monitor. It's just far more comprehensive. And it's also interesting. And I love that you're into it.
And I'm sure you're so much more popular now that you're not pricking people. So that's good. Well, thank you, Molly. We're definitely going to dive a little bit deeper into that because that's something that's new on my radar. So I'm excited to learn a little bit more about that. So
For
thanks.
sure.
And then Samir, tell us about Biostrap, main focus, and also 2022, excuse me. What's on the horizon?
Hey, Giancarlo. Hey. So I'm CEO and founder of Biostrap. Kind of my origin story is actually I lost 80 pounds after college. I was a computer science nerd, and I really wanted to use my computer science powers for something good in the world that also gets people to get excited about being healthy.
Yeah.
That's kind of where my motivation came from. And really this Biostrap was born. I've been working on this for over probably about 7 years now. And really I didn't set out to just to create another wearable, to be honest. I believe in the power of raw data. And the raw data, what I'm talking about is photoplasmography data, the PPG data, kind of the signals before you calculate something like heart rate or HRV
Right.
is high resolution PPG data. So our whole mission is to democratize this PPG data for researchers, enterprise customers, and build insights on top of this, because just like heart rate, HRV are all derivatives for PPG, there are millions of markers that are undiscovered that we believe we can be on the forefront of inventing. And it's not just us. I mean, we're working with some partners to create new biomarkers for pain or something specific to disease category. It's pretty amazing, and it's something that I think my mission, if anything, is just to teach everyone what the power of PPG can give you, and really allow everyone to access that. So really, that's kind of been my mission.
Yeah. And to be able to democratize it is just, now that begins to empower the individual even more, right? Because now they get to take that data, and then I'm sure there are going to be so many third-party apps and platforms that are out there that they can then just pull that, just like genetic data now, right?
It's
Right.
exact analog is genetic data, and how it's so much data sets. But this is kind of like a continuous snapshot that moves as you kind of introduce lifestyle modifications, your physiology changes, right? But then those are things that are raw data. You can start building algorithms, even go back in time and then see how was there these markers that I just said, that you can go back in time and see the snapshots. Let's say that we come up with a new thing for, I don't know, measuring stress, let's say, you can go back and see, during stressful times, using this new biomarker, but we have a whole snapshot of all your 5-year history that you can go back in time because we have the raw data. So it's almost like looking at your previous self and understanding, different trends. So that's kind of the way I think about it. It's almost being able to look at different endpoints, heart rate variability, heart rate, these are all excellent, SpO2. But I think there's a lot to be discovered. Optimal based blood pressure, for example, is a new one that's coming out in the market. We're just we want to be that data layer, though. Work with people that are innovative, and the researchers, the institutions. Those guys are kind of the future of our health. So that's our mission, is just giving people the data to do even better.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful, and that's close to my heart. So I love that. So, and Samir, and tell me about any big thing or focus or target for 2022?
Well, we're launching a new device, and that can't say much next year.
All right.
So that's it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all I can say.
That's going to be exciting. Okay.
It is. It will be.
Well, then we may try to pull a few things out of you, but okay. But so Samir, thank you for that. And so we're going to dive a little bit deeper into that in a little bit. And then, of course, Dr. Barrie. Dr. Barrie, can you tell us a little bit about Viome and some key services that you guys are providing? And it seems like it doesn't change. You just keep building and evolving every few months here. So in your own words, what's your key services, and what's down the pipeline for 2022?
Well, first, I'd just like to point out what may be obvious, that the 3 companies represented here are really part of this whole change of how healthcare is being delivered. And there was this trend pre-COVID, certainly, where people were more interested in taking charge of their health. There were apps, there were devices, and there was this trend that was kind of going like this. COVID, which all of a sudden closed down doctors' offices and everything else, the trend went like this. And the trend will keep on continuing. So what we're seeing with these 3 companies and many others is ways to enable the normal person to take charge of their health, learn more about it, and take actionable steps to improve their health, both currently and for future longevity and less chronic disease in the future. So it's exciting to be part of that.
Well said.
Yeah. So Viome started with this interesting mission 6 years ago now, I guess, by our founder and CEO, Naveen Jain. How do we make chronic illness optional, right? That was his vision. And what does that mean? That means, how do we give people the information and tools so they have a choice of whether they want to have chronic illness in 5 years or 10 years or 15 years? And surprisingly, maybe to some people, but wonderfully, the past 5 years has seen Viome make a contribution towards that, along with other companies as well. So Viome initially was a company that took a look at people's gastrointestinal microbiome, measuring gene expression, messenger RNA, very different than looking through some of the older techniques of who's there, who's not there, just identifying species. That turns out to be not very useful. So first company, and probably still the only company, using gene expression in something called metatranscriptomics to evaluate both the microbiome of the GI tract, microbiome of the oral tract, which we'll talk about later, perhaps, and the gene expression of the host from blood. So that's enabled us to give people tools, whether it's food recommendations, whether it's supplements, to help change their lives and accomplish their health goals. It's allowed us to develop the largest mRNA database in the world, which allows us to do discovery in terms of diagnostics, therapeutics. We just received FDA breakthrough device, for example, for diagnosing oral cancer from a salivary sample. It's actually oral head and neck and throat cancer. So a lot happening with the tools that we learned from the microbiome in terms of therapeutics. A lot happening, as people know, the microbiome is related to just about every chronic disease that exists. So,
which is huge, and I'm going to translate that for people down at my IQ level. And so what you're really also saying is that you're able to do all that, and yet the consumer, all we have to do is maybe take a swab of our saliva, a pinprick of our blood, and a fecal sample, right? Mm-hmm. And we ship that away, and then we get to see a lot of data coming up on an app on our phone. Is that like that's the layman's my level thinking? Is that right?
That's correct. But and perhaps more importantly than seeing a lot of data, it's what does the data allow you to do? Okay. So data is important. That's the first step in any kind of thing. But now, how do we interpret that data, understand how people make a difference? And whether that's with the glucose monitoring devices that Molly has, or there's other devices, we have data. And now how do we translate the data into, if you do this, we can measure the results, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, and see the difference.
Yeah. Wonderful. Wonderful. And what would you say is the target for 2022, Stephen?
Twofold. For consumers, it's the integration of the oral microbiome. So people may have been reading that the oral microbiome is actually probably where cognitive decline starts. Alzheimer's, Parkinson's starts in the mouth, starts with leaky gums, similar to the leaky gut situation that we've talked about for years now. Yeah. Colorectal cancer actually starts in the mouth through certain bacteria that are there producing certain toxins which cross the leaky gums and get into the body. So this is a whole new field really in the past 2 or 3 years. And now we'll be able to offer this investigation, this information to consumers starting in January of 2022. Amazing.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for that. That's we can't get. Gosh, I hope we have enough time for all this. But okay, this is going to be exciting. So we've got these three companies, and we're going to start to go into this. And unfortunately, the main crux of this conversation won't be about all of the health benefits, though. That's where I would sit for the next 3 hours. We're going to talk about a little bit of the mechanics behind the scenes. The trends in tech, the trends in business and in funding, and so we're gonna kind of talk. We're gonna stay on that level, but hopefully we'll be able to weave in some of these health trends that we're seeing, as well as how this can empower the consumer. And I think that's ultimately what I think a lot of us have in common here on this panel. Katie, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you see down the pipeline for 2022, either for yourself specifically or the way you're looking at the trends? What do you see from your perspective?
Yeah, so I guess you'd consider kind of like the self-experimenter, biohacker YouTuber. So I was really sick of talk about trends. Like I was really sick of seeing people just selling me a bunch of products online. And so I said, well, I'm going to actually test all these things myself, give people my data, like here it is, and then tell you, based on my experience, if I think that there is, some efficacy to some of these different devices, and then I let the consumers, or the audience, really determine that for themselves. But I like to be upfront and honest, transparent with people. So that was really the whole impetus, is just like, I'm a journalist by trade. So I was like, how do I get people educated about this stuff? And so what I've learned, and kind of some of the trends that I've seen, has been so much focused around data, metrics, and accuracy. And one of the things that I constantly run up against, because I've talked a lot about sleep and I wear the Oura Ring, I've tried, the Biostrap, the Whoop strap, like all of the things. But I think, something that I'm certainly looking forward to is improvements in technology. And, kind of like Samir alluded to, we're just going to get even more precise with our measurements and the consistency and accuracy of these measurements, how often you're getting your deep sleep, that the algorithms are processing your deep sleep, how often the pulse is being recorded, and all those things that will give you a more comprehensive picture as a consumer, and hopefully be able to kind of lead you in the right direction towards what to do about your sleep, your glucose, your health, etc. So I think in the future, and where I see things going, we're going to see even more low profile tech, or, people often complain about the wearables not really suiting their lifestyle. And so I expect that we might see things that are expandable or change so that you can really integrate it into your life, whether that be a ring that turns into a watch or vice versa. And then what I'm really hoping for, in addition to getting better and more precise accuracy, is just more personalization when it comes to some of the recommendations on what to do about your data. Viome is taking a huge charge in this. I know Nutrasense as well. You have the opportunity to actually talk one-on-one with representatives of the company to lead you, towards better health decisions. But we're going to get even better with this stuff. And it's going to be a no-brainer for people, where they're going to be able to open up their app and they're going to have a list of foods that they should try, the supplements, like everything is going to be woven together and really integrated. In my opinion. So that is maybe 2022, 2023, not really sure.
Yep. Yes, no, I think that's going to be huge. And as the accuracy improves, of course, then it becomes the feedback and the advice becomes more relevant, right? So but good. Okay, so all right, so I'm going to be calling on you here, Katie, because there's going to be quite a few times that I'll be out of my league. So I'm going to ask for you to help me on this one. So okay, so as we go forward, then how do we see? Let's talk about technology. We're in Connect Week 2021. This is part of Innovate Pasadena's huge push to connect designers, institutions, educational institutions like the Art Center here in Pasadena, Caltech here in Pasadena, as well as many other corporate partners. How do we understand? How should we think about consumer demand? There are a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of professionals that are both in the tech and design world. How should they think about where consumer demand is going? And Katie, you're already starting to speak into this. And I'm going to leave this open. Whoever wants to begin to chime in, where do we see consumer demand going? Where do we see, where's the data from some of our long-standing companies that if you've already been in this for a while, you're seeing some of the trends with purchases and services? What's happening? What should we be expecting for 2022? And again, you've already touched on this. So this is already huge. What else? Who wants to chime in? Anybody can jump in. And if you don't, I'll call on you. It's like class. No.
Oh no, I absolutely accepted.
Oh,
I'm back.
Right.
I'm gonna leave the floor for a second. I'll let you take it.
Okay.
Barrie.
All right. David.
So I think the opportunities for entrepreneurs at the moment are limitless. I mean, we've seen a whole paradigm shift happening in how healthcare is being delivered and what people want. and people realizing that they have to take charge of their own health to keep their immune system boosted. They have to take charge of their own health to understand how they are going to age gracefully. They can't rely upon the institutions because the institutions are not doing such a good job. In the United States, for example, goodness sakes, the average lifespan has now gone down, I think it's almost 3 years in the past 3 years.
Wow.
I mean, this is incredible when you think about it. We spend more money than anybody in terms of healthcare. So people are understanding that they have to be involved. So the entrepreneurs, you have a limitless area to play in, I think. And I know you mentioned earlier, I'm not sure this is part of your question, but in terms of funding, if you look at the past 2 years, the amount of money that's going into this field from private equity, from venture capital people, from companies going public, billions and billions and billions of dollars. I think we're going to see a lot more of that happening.
Yeah, and it does seem, especially, you have experience now as Viome has also broken off into a whole separate company now as well with Viome Life Sciences. It seems like there's even more interest now because of some of the life science opportunities there with even new drugs and vaccines that may be more personalized and customized. So both on do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Sure. So Katie mentioned, personalization, precision. That's a key, obviously, for healthcare. Mm-hmm. There's been a buzzword for a number of years, personalized medicine, but it hasn't really been happening until recently. Yeah. Obviously, everyone's different. Everyone's an individual, and everyone reacts to foods differently. And it turns out everybody reacts to drugs and pharmaceuticals differently. Quick example: the drug levodopa that's used for Parkinson's disease is not effective in upwards about 40% of the population. They never knew why it wasn't effective. It turns out that these people have a particular microbiome, for example, that eats up, in layman's term, it deactivates the levodopa. So pharmaceutical companies obviously now looking at, okay, how do we change the microbiome so we don't have the levodopa being eaten up in someone's gut, and we can now treat 30% more of the people who have Parkinson's, for example. So we see that happening. So we see all the data that's being generated by these companies being used to say, how do we have more effective, more personalized therapeutics? How do we understand what drugs are working, what drugs aren't working? How do we understand what supplements and prebiotics, postbiotics, and probiotics are? How do we intervene? It turns out these small molecules have giant impact on the body. So there's a drug approach, still going to be important for a long, long time, but there's this growing approach of how do we get better effectiveness from things found in our foods, for things found in our diet. How do we control that? And that's going to be a big leap for people.
Yeah, thank you. That's wonderful, wonderful. Anyone else? I know there's a lag here. Oh, all right.
Hey.
Yes, Samir, tell me.
Yeah, no, I think Katie and Stephen said it perfectly. It's all push for, I think, what personalized medicine, quote unquote, right? It's about N=1. It's about understanding individuality, bio-individuality. And I think that's one place where, everyone is unique. The microbiome is unique. Their physiology is unique. And I think, the healthcare system has failed us in a lot of ways. So it's all just to take data in their own hands and make insights out of it. And that's why the products and everything's limitless, because now products are created out of this kind of experience. You're seeing a lot of, the funding industry is booming in the tech and the med tech scene. We're seeing a lot of companies, all sorts of companies being funded for ridiculous amounts of money. And I think it's just going to keep getting better. Me being a kind of a techie, I look at the technology and even the sensors that are going to come out, being able to measure things, kind of passively, things that, you might need to like stick needles in are now passively, like what Nutrasense is doing. That to me is like, that's game changing, actually. That's just in time, real time data that you can literally act upon just in the right time. And we're going to see a lot more of that kind of thing, things that measuring interstitial fluid, sweat, even you can see like spectroscopy that you used to get in the chem lab is now miniaturized into something that's in the back of your wrist. It's just like amazing technologies that are just miniaturized, just like, what the cell phone industry did for everybody. Now all those, wearables came about actually from the cell phone industry. from that miniaturization. And, finding low power subsystems. So if that means longer battery life, better user experience, and even what I'm excited about is self-powered, using body heat or solar powered, and then basically never charge anything ever again. These are the cool trends that you're going to see that I've been watching for a while now. And it's about creating, of course, good data, but also a good user experience. These two have to merge to each other. And this is where I see both the medical and consumer space blurring very much so. And I love that because, good data and good behaviors. So I think that's kind of my overall analysis of it.
Yeah.
There was just an article published 2 days ago, I think, at the University of Arizona, which caught my attention because of participating in this conference. Was they developed kind of a wearable device that molds to the body wherever they want it to be, and takes power from some device in the room, and they can store it for a couple of days if you leave that room. But you won't even know you have this device on. If you want to measure something in the armpit, it'll be molded to fit right into your armpit. You won't even know it's there. So, and then I was shown the other day a new company out of Spain that injects some chips inside people, right? And actually in Europe, they've got about 30,000 people wearing chips in all parts of their body. At the moment, it's just measuring temperature, but next year it's going to be able to modify it to measure heart rate and a couple other things. But you just put your hand up against your phone and your skin lights up. Kind of scary, but.
Right. And there is this kind of interesting line, right? Which maybe if we have time, we'll begin to explore that. Like, where does this, machine human interface, where's our comfort zone, right? But Molly, tell me, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I love what everyone's been saying, but I completely agree. And just the fact that everything's becoming more personalized, and we're just looking at, if you're looking at the three companies that are here, it's blood glucose, heart rate variability, and, looking at the microbiome. There's so many other aspects of the body that can be illuminated through different technologies. So like triglycerides or cortisol levels or insulin levels. I think that as who knows how long it's going to take to develop these devices, but it's going to be that comprehensive approach of all these different things that can help us move forward in making better choices based off of what we're seeing in the data. So, and I agree with Katie, and I always think the same thing. It's just like, we're just getting started in everything, like even the continuous glucose monitor. It's like, sure, there's imperfections in just about everything right now, but where are we going to be 10 years from now? It's amazing to even think about, and it's not going to stop. All the technologies are just going to pick up, and I think they're just going to move at rapid speed. And again, people are frustrated with the healthcare system. I know I was personally impacted by that, and that's why I became so passionate about all of this stuff and finding out your personal responses, because you do have to take control of your own health and be your own advocate, because it's hard to get someone to kind of be on your side and lead you through all that. So it's all amazing. And I just love the excitement in everything, because it's cool.
Yeah. Katie, I see you. Tell me, what are your thoughts?
I will, just to kind of reiterate, like, yes, the personalization, I think the companies are doing an amazing job right now. And yes, in the future, 10, 15 years, we're going to look back and it's going to feel like this was the Stone Ages, but then that's going to be incredible. But I think a lot of this conversation is centered around the body inside and out. And I think there's also a huge consumer demand for what's going on in your mind. And I mean, maybe you, Dr. Licata, can maybe speak to this, and not to totally turn the tables on you, but EEG headwear and software, what the heck? There's nothing really on the market. And I'm sorry, but I'm a frustrated consumer too.
Yes.
The Muse S device only gets you so far. You have to download apps, and it's not really giving you all of your brainwave data. I am fingers crossed, hoping that we're going to see something that's affordable and effective and accurate come out on the market in the next year or two, that's actually going to give you real-time brainwave data. So you know when you're focused, you know when you're like in the flow, and you also know what meditation is actually doing, because until you have that biofeedback, you can see what is happening to your brainwaves, you are not as inclined to do something. And so that's why I always say, once you have the proof that something is working, it's just going to make you want to do that thing more.
Oh, yes.
That's where I
Oh,
really,
yes.
really cannot wait for that. So I love all of the devices, but I'm really excited about the brain health stuff.
Yes. And we've been watching that closely. And again, in our office, we do EEGs every day, and we know how much work it is to get an accurate EEG with only 21 leads. And so yes, there's nothing on the market right now that we feel comfortable about on really recommending. But it's coming. It's coming because the technology it's getting closer. Accuracy, though, is king, especially when you deal with the brain. So until now, people still fly over to see us and they get the maps, and then we do the rest. But I hope so soon. Yes. So then, yeah. I have a question then, along with, we're kind of, maybe we're version 1.0, I don't know, version 2.0 of the wearable world. Who are the consumer? Oh, yes. Tell me.
I have a quick, since we're a panel discussion back and forth, even though we have this technology. Don't take Katie away. Katie was commenting, and you commented, what's going to look like in 10, 15 years from now. I just have a thought. It's not 10 or 15 years. It's 5 years. Yeah. It's 3 years. Yeah. The pace of technology and the pace of change is so rapid. Yeah. So I think I'm pretty optimistic we're going to see these things a lot sooner than 10 years away. But we'll see. In 4 years we'll get together again and we'll see.
Yes.
Just to point that out.
That's a very important detail, right? Because it should set our expectations. And for people that are interested in this, I mean, for people in the tech world, people in the design world, we need you, right? Companies need some insight on how to make this happen faster. It's going to happen. I think a big part of the question that I was going to follow up with was, how much of it is going to happen centered around California? It seems like the days of Silicon Valley, or even the West Coast of the US, may or may not be where the centers are in the next 1, 2, 3, or 4 or 5 years. What do you think? Any thoughts on that?
Austin is pretty popular right now.
Austin is coming up.
You know, I think it's, we've seen what the pandemic has done in terms of the shift away from the office space. And I think that, like, as companies start to evolve and they start to realize that, it's not about necessarily being in an office, but getting the best type of people to be working on this stuff. And I really just predict that we're going to see outsourcing everywhere around the world. And wouldn't that be awesome? Because then we're getting new perspectives and new, ideas from all facets of the world that are going to come together and put these kind of wearables together. It's not just going to be one isolated bubble community, because as much as I love Silicon Valley, sometimes, we're in our own world there, and it doesn't necessarily meet the needs of the rest of the country. So I really am excited for more outsourcing. Yeah, personally,
it sounds like Samir's right there with you, right?
Yeah, you said Austin, Katie. I'm moving to Austin actually.
I'll be there in a couple of weeks. So
it's got I just feel like California doesn't value startups. To be honest with you, they take every dollar you make, they want a piece of it. There are other states that are less grubby. So to me it's more like I lived in California all my life, was born here, so it's a huge move for me, but I just think that there are other places that have wonderful things to offer that will welcome you. And we live in a global world now. The tech scene is not just California definitely is where kind of it started, the Silicon Valley, but what we're seeing is little pockets of Silicon Hills and Silicon Beach and Silicon everything. So I think what's beautiful is that everyone can start innovating in the comfort of their underwear at home. So it doesn't really matter where you live.
No, absolutely. And then so how will that so let's go there then. So what are you looking for? I mean, as companies, what are you looking for in new professionals that you're hiring and designers that you're hiring? I mean, you need these instruments to be both sleek and good looking, and yet be able to pack a million different sensors in there. What should the new grads be looking for, right? What should they show up with?
I mean, I have a kick-ass designer, and he doesn't live in the States. He lives in Brazil and Chile. But, you go to different parts of the world that have different mindsets, and there's different countries. India's not known for design; they're known for coding. So we have a lot of coders out in India. But then I know that our design is brilliant, and these are the things you can actually, now that you live, tech isn't you can go outside the four walls. I just think that there are people everywhere in the world that you can hire. You just have to find them.
Yeah. And Molly, what do you have to say on that?
Yeah, I even think too with Nutrasense, we're completely remote, and I think it's just awesome that we, especially from a dietitian perspective, the dietitians that work at Nutrasense have a different outlook on the way that we practice, nutrition therapy. And if we were specifically looking in a concentrated location, who knows what we would be able to get from that. So it is unique in the sense that we can pull from, getting the most, unique and like-minded individuals from all over the place. And it's not even just in the US. We have people over in, other countries as well. So I think it's just that unification of different mindsets, just that are not in, having that is awesome, I think. So
yeah.
Great.
So then what should new grads be looking for? How do they compete in a world where, just saying you're a Caltech grad, I mean, that's, that pulls a lot of weight. That may not pull as much weight as it used to now, right? So what should the Caltech grad, what should the Pasadena Art Center grad, who, the Art Center known for design of vehicles and some of the best tech that's been out there, how do they compete in a world now where you can pull from anyone? Where does that?
I could tell you how our hiring process works. I mean, really, we hire based on portfolios. If you start creating at an early age and start, as soon as you can, start creating and learning and iterating and keep creating and build a portfolio early on. Quite frankly, we were lucky to find our designer, but it's really hard to find good ones. But the reason why I found him was because he had an awesome portfolio that really jived with our design language. And design has a bit of science. It's not all art, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I've learned a lot. And we're very design oriented as a company. So what it is just to start kind of getting your hands dirty and building. Of course you have all the classes and whatnot. But if you go home and start building stuff on the weekend, start kind of going outside the structure and start. I think that's the kind of people that are entrepreneurial but in their field and express themselves in design. Those are the people that kind of, rise above, I feel. Just like in tech, when you go home and start coding on the weekends, those are people that get really good at it,
Right. So it's not your potential that's going to get you hired. It's really about what you've already done, right? It's show me the proof.
Caltech helps. I'll tell you that. Absolutely. Yeah. But end of the day, I realized that, I think, was it Google or something? They don't even look at they're fine with college dropouts now, right? Whatever. So end of the day, it doesn't matter, but it's really about what you put and bring forward. End of the day, diplomas matter, of course, and where you graduate, it helps get the conversation started. But I've seen some of the best coders come from not even like MIT, but like an art school. I'm like, how are you even existing? I don't know. But it's just interesting, I've seen so many resumes in front of that. I think it's the individual. What you put is what you get.
That's great.
I feel like I don't have much insight to the design aspect of it, but just because I'm a dietitian and I focus primarily on that aspect. And it's the same thing. You can kind of weed out people that have that old school way of thinking where it's just they're not going to promote that change that we're looking for. And we are a new startup and we need that entrepreneurial mind and people that are just going to be adaptable and willing to be open to change and all that stuff. So that's pretty much what we're looking for, and for sure.
Yeah. And Stephen,
So,
yep,
I
you have a history now. I've followed you, and you've had so many hires. It's incredible. So what's some of your
thousands and thousands. I would have to say that if I think back 30, 40 years ago, the process was obviously a lot different than it is today. I encourage people, if they have any kind of aspect of entrepreneurial mind, go for it. I mean, the future of the world is being created by young people graduating from schools right now, and they can be a part of choosing how their future is going to be by having that impact. In terms of Viome, certainly two careers that are very important to us. We have about 200 employees now, but it's translational scientists and data scientists. So the key is, how do we take all this information that's being generated by machine learning, by artificial intelligence, et cetera, and how do we make it into something that's useful? How do we translate it into actionable items, into what people can understand, people can do? So that's translational science, translational medicine. That's very, very important to us. And then data scientists, again, masses of data that all these devices are going to be producing. How do we make sense of it? Okay, and what do we do with it? And as there are more devices in the future, there's going to be just more data. So I think those are very two important things in the future. And in terms of designers, just how do we make things more useful to people? More attractive to them, be it packaging, for example, less impact on the environment. How do people use these devices easier? So there's a whole lot of design element that go into that. So that's an important field for everybody.
Yeah. No, that's wonderful. I've heard it said that for some new grads, go out there and start your business, and even if you fail, that business becomes your portfolio, right? And so even if you didn't make money at it, what you were able to accomplish, that seed can become something that then can get picked up by someone else, someone larger, and then maybe they can run with it, when you have the resources there. So somebody who was in the world more than I was said that, and I thought, well, that's an interesting concept. What do you think about that? Anybody?
I agree, and then I'll pass it off to everybody else. But I agree totally, and it also gives you the opportunity to be in touch with more people. So even if whatever you've created does fail for reasons, you've now, in that process of being an entrepreneur, you've now been in touch with a number of people. So your horizons have now been broadened of what your contacts are. So I think that's important as well.
That's huge. I don't see anyone else on there, so I'm gonna move on. So then, everybody's talking about disruptions. I'd like to just name off some technologies that continue to get larger and larger and more influential. Obviously, artificial intelligence is already key, especially with Stephen, you and Viome. But I'm gonna just open it up to artificial intelligence, blockchain, 3D printing. I mean, even the Internet of Things and how wearables are going to play a role with that, right? The big data, you already talked about data scientists. Where do we see these things happening? Have they become disruptive yet? Is 2022 going to begin to start to turn even maybe the things you're already doing in a whole nother direction? What do we see with these on the trajectory? Anyone can speak to this.
Since my picture's there, I'll start off.
Yes.
In terms of blockchain, I am fortunate to have a son-in-law who is, I guess, 35, who's been in this blockchain world for 15 years, right? So almost from the beginning.
Yeah.
And so I've had a good mentor in trying to understand what it means, because someone of my background, my age, it's certainly very foreign to me. And I, in the past year, have really begun to understand the critical importance of blockchain, and it is just going to be a basic fabric of our lives in the future. And forget about cryptocurrency, and all that for a second. But blockchain is a backbone that most everything's going to be built on in the future. People don't know that. Microsoft, I think, has 500 blockchain engineers. software developers. And this is not just some fringe thing for, you know, these 18-year-old billionaires with their Bitcoin. This is actually very, very mainstream. It just, the mainstream we don't see. Banks are using it all over, and banks have giant teams developing it. So I think everyone should keep on paying attention to blockchain. And if you can combine your design and your engineering of blockchain, interesting future.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah. And I personally think, you know, I agree with everything that you said, but I also see nanotechnology and AI becoming massive in the next few years. I mean, I don't think, and I've actually talked to Naveen personally about this, and we talked about like a day in the future when you wake up, you literally go to the bathroom in the morning, and then instantly you get a readout of every single nutrient deficient, vitamin deficiency, coupled with then a full plan for your day, the exercise, the sunlight, the vitamins, the food, all of the stuff. And our days will be so personalized for us. Is that good? Is that bad? I'm not sure. I'm excited to see what's going to happen. But if it does make us healthier and give us the ability to, you know, live our lives in the way that we want and feel fulfilled and do the things that we want, that's really kind of cool. And I don't think that is too far off.
What a picture
in the next few years, you know?
Imagine a world where your toilet is smarter than you are, right? I mean, that is scary. And yet it makes sense. It makes sense. Everything is going in that direction, and why not? Yeah. And devices are just going to get smaller too. So I think that is also, like, with nanotechnology, we're going to be able to have more metrics in various places, whether that be chips or the smallest device that would be totally like discreet and not interfere with your day-to-day. So that's my thoughts. Great.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback off of what Katie's saying, I mean, I think we're going to have a data storage problem, right? We have so much data, we don't know what to do with. This is where the AI comes in. This is where big data comes in. And then lastly, the fabric that ties it all together could be blockchain, right? So it's funny. And of course, I am an IoT company, right? Internet of Things being, you know, different endpoints for collecting data. So really, I think I hit every keyword you mentioned. But really, it's just funny because all these different things are tools, you know. You can use a hammer for many different things, but maybe it won't work, right? So, but I think that's the thing I see. Blockchain doesn't solve all problems, but if it's something to do with security, privacy, distribution, you know, all those things, are perfect use case of it.
That's also a huge thing, privacy, because a lot of people I work with, you know, always like ask me like, well, how secure is my personal health data? Even if it's just your sleep data, you know, I think there is that element of like, how can we safeguard this for people as they're investing their money into these wearables and the data that they're collecting off these wearables, what's going to eventually happen with it? And so I think that's definitely something where the blockchain can kind of hopefully help mitigate some of those concerns for people down the line.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you, Katie. And I think, that's a good place to store the data. It's where you have full ownership of it. And of course, you know, it's a naturally secure place to have your data stored. So I think 100% agree. And of course, you know, I think, you know, miniaturization is awesome too. You know, I think I mentioned a little bit of being self-powered, you know, being able to, you know, have the best data possible. And we're going to just produce so much data that I think it's up to us engineers, data scientists, to start make sense of the data and introduce newer algorithms for determining, you know, all these different interesting endpoints of health. So I think it's just going to get more exciting as we layer all these technologies on top of each other. And I'm just super excited to see what happens in not even the next 15 years, but the next 5 years. Like Dr. Stephen was alluding to, technology is moving that quickly. And I love that it's moving in the health space. You know, we can all thank COVID, of course, to bring it up in front in the forefront. It's done one good thing, and that's made health a top priority for everybody.
Yeah. Well, and what I've heard weaved through quite a few of these conversations is there seem to be two parallel trends and maybe a tension, right, between us holding on to our data, our privacy, our ownership, our autonomy on one hand, and then on the other hand, some organization larger than us who owns it, controls it, maybe can manipulate it, and now, and holds it over us. And it seems like that's been already a conversation within the COVID world, especially now with things like vaccine passports and so on that we're in the middle of here in California. What can anyone speak into that tension? What things could companies do to try to maximize one or the other? And what sacrifices sometimes does a company have to make in order to maybe preserve something like privacy for the individual? So a lot of questions. Go wherever you want to go with that. Anyway, Samir, you're there. It's the camera likes you.
Yeah, no, the camera likes me. I mean, it's such a loaded question, and you wouldn't consider, Facebook has so much information about us. It knows exactly what we're going to do next, right? And they have the power to do good or evil, right? Or sell us ads or do something nefarious. And I think, health companies that have to be very, pretty much, cognizant of that as well. The data they collect is extremely, data is the new oil, and health data is even more applicable, to determine, there's sometimes you have these, you have this big responsibility to maintain that privacy. And it can be used for good or bad. So I think your question is more around kind of the vaccine passports and all that. Is that kind of what you're?
Or no, just any as a business, I think that there is a tension, and sometimes and that tension can sometimes be a difficult choice to make, because you may be able to literally make a 10x profit if you go in one direction versus another. And so how does a company manage that? Who are the decision makers? So for new entrepreneurs who are getting into this, what should they think about? What are the things you guys wrestle with, just so that they know they're not alone dealing with some of these?
Well, do no evil. That's all I gotta say.
But don't drop that halfway through, right? Molly, you're on the screen. Tell us, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I can totally resonate with that. Just from personal experience as well. Just with health information and data, you want it to be private. And I know even at Nutrasense, we are. We're very cognizant of this, and we, work with HIPAA and compliance and everything just to ensure that, that's, there, so the person doesn't feel that their data just can be accessed by, anyone. So it's something that we're, continuously working on, and totally get that it's it's a weird thing too in this field as well. So.
I've just commented in general. I mean, of course, at Viome, and then anyone starting a company, it's just a simple thing that the data that we collect cannot be shared with anybody. I mean, so the data ends up being anonymized and aggregate. So even if someone were to somehow hack into a database, it's all anonymized anyway, so they couldn't know anything about any individual. So companies have to take a stand that we don't share, sell, whatever the data with anybody, and that's how you have to do it.
Yeah,
I think people forget, by the way, maybe in times of that years ago, if you went to see your doctor and there was some problem, everybody in that office knew the problem, right? And the receptionist would go home at night and say, God, Harrison Ford was in today, and he has a so. I think actually we maybe have better controls now than in some ways in the data that existed in healthcare professionals' offices.
Anyway. Yeah. And the only reason why I brought up the vaccine passport is because, now our health data becomes our entry point into things that we took for granted, and so it now opens this larger. That's where my brain goes as well. If it could be here, why couldn't it be over here too? And so that's where the health data becomes now becomes even more important than we ever thought, right? So yeah,
didn't we give up our privacy a long time ago with all this whole internet stuff, and then everyone's now saying, "Oh my gosh, look what happens! Look what Facebook knows about us." Not to pick on Facebook, but I think that's a fundamental question. We gave up our privacy, a number of years ago. And now we're wondering, can we get it back? Should we get it back? It's a whole big discussion.
Right. Can you close that Pandora's box back up? Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Now for some of us, and again, we may not, I don't think we have any blockchain experts, but Stephen, you already described that you have familiarity with it. Could companies that are built on top of a blockchain platform and individuals can it be more secure, or at least can there be more ownership? Because there's privacy and then there's also ownership, and maybe they're not necessarily mutually exclusive, but they don't seem to be the same. How could blockchain begin to affect either privacy or ownership? And again, and if it's outside of our scope, I'm totally okay with that too.
It's outside of my scope.
Fair enough.
Other than I agree with you that the big difference between privacy and who has access to it. But
okay, well, good. Anyone else have even a thought on that? And again, I know we don't have any experts on the panel, but directions, insights. No, that's okay.
How do we get the NFT world in this, right?
How do we get the NFT world? Ooh, I'm curious. What is that for some of our listeners, and how could that apply?
Non-fungible tokens. And all I know is my son-in-law convinced me to take. I'm a photographer by hobby. Convinced me to have some of my best photographs available as NFTs at these crazy high prices. And what can I say? People want to pay it. So
yeah, right.
But NFT actually there's probably some aspect in healthcare with NFTs. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yep.
And the metaverse. Think about the metaverse. Metaverse definitely has a role in healthcare, for sure.
So I'm not even familiar with the terms. Even this is how far behind I am. So tell me.
Metaverse goes back to Second City, back in 2000. These are the virtual universes, virtual worlds.
Yes. Oh wow.
Right.
Okay.
So there's obviously a whole way of, and with AR and VR integrating into these virtual worlds, healthcare can be delivered in the metaverse.
Wow.
In the future.
Yeah, and in particular, I could already imagine, especially with mental health in the mental health world, and because I know we're already doing some of that with neurofeedback and biofeedback with AR and VR. You can do it virtually. Once we get the data, there's so much that can be done. That still has to be done in office for us. But okay, interesting. Yeah. Any other thoughts on this? Yeah. Well, we've talked about Facebook a little bit. I'm going to continue to move down the line here. How are your companies interacting with social media, through social media? What will the role of social media be for you specifically in 2022? And will it be different than 2021 and 2020, especially now that social media has taken a little bit of a hit? Any thoughts, Molly?
Well, I'm here. Well, we've just started totally expanding on, a lot of our marketing and whatnot. We are, we're on Instagram, so we're trying to be more hyper-focused on there. We go on podcasts. We're on Facebook. We have a Facebook group. So anyone that comes in uses CGM and our product, they can, they're forming their own little community on there, so they can, provide feedback to each other. But yeah, we're that's what people like. Even if I go on Instagram, it's just like, that's, for shopping, for like anything, food, anything, then it's just, you can click on it and you learn more information about it. So it's just like what's out there right now. And that's what people are paying attention to. It's just, you need to draw their attention and get them in. So
you see it as you'll continue to be using it as a major tool 2022.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yep.
For sure.
What about Biome or Biostrap? Oh, there we go.
Two of us. Samir, go ahead.
Sure, I'll be short. I mean, I think, for us, we use Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn just for education, to be honest. There's a lot of opportunity for our clients to, or just anybody really, it doesn't have to be our clients or anybody or potential, to learn about human physiology, because I think everyone can learn a little pieces. So we try to do little, like what we call like Biostrap Academy, a little bit tidbits of information, learning about the history or learning about new biomarkers and how they're applied, and just give general updates. So for us, it's really just kind of, these days, the way that I look at, social media for companies is that just to show that they're active and a functioning company. It doesn't look that great if you haven't seen a post in 6 months or longer for a company, right? So it's more for that, but also just, we can use it as a platform for educating our user base. For us, we actually use LinkedIn a lot more because it's kind of more more focused on the enterprise research kind of thing space anyway. But for the consumer space, we kind of just dabble a little bit of educational content on Instagram. Facebook, we don't use too often, to be honest, but Instagram seems to be pretty good for us.
Okay. Yep. And just real quick, Samir, so that's because you have both a B2C and a B2B component, right? A business to customer as well as or business to consumer as well as a business to business. And that's what LinkedIn is for you.
Well, we would transition directly to B2B, actually. B2C is still open. Yeah, we stopped. Yeah, you can go and purchase devices, but that's not our target market anymore. We focus much more on enterprise now. Yeah, great. It's where I think because the fact is the data just isn't valuable to consumers, we find, unless you have, I don't know, someone like Katie who just understands everything and knows how to make it actionable, right? So we find practitioners that can use the data and they become, more informed and how to create protocols and measure the right things. So really we've positioned our business model a lot differently in the last 2 years around when COVID hit. And it's been much, much better. It's sticking much better than D2C.
Yeah. No, that's great to know. That's great to hear. Yep. And Stephen?
I appreciate how, Samir, you use the term education, that a lot of your external efforts are about educating people. And I believe education is a key marketing tool for sure. So Viome uses everything, be it Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook and Google Ads. And I don't even pretend to know all the things that department does. And I know our plans would include continuing that. I think what I like to think about, because I'm always thinking about the future of the pioneers. Like, all right, what's the next Instagram? What's the next LinkedIn? What's the next Facebook? What's another new way to reach people as those become somewhat saturated? For sure. If I were starting a company today, I don't think I would try to do a whole lot of Facebook advertising and stuff. It seems to me that it's a tool, but saturated. So what are the other ways that we can do to reach people? That's what I like to think about, and hopefully some of the entrepreneurs and designers are thinking that way. What are the new tools to educate people, reach them, and let them know about what you're doing and why it's important to them?
Yeah. And Katie, obviously you're going to be the voice here. I'd like to inject something, a concept, and then I'd love you to close us on this idea. There's the concept of the diffusion of innovation. I think many of us have heard about it. And again, it's this idea that any new innovation starts with this kind of core group, and then it starts to spread. And once it hits this kind of this key turning point, it becomes common sense. Think about.
Are you saying like when the Oura Ring started off with like Dave Asprey, now Kim Kardashian is wearing one?
There you go. Right. I'm a little bit older. I was thinking of like cassette tapes to DVDs, but okay, fine. Yeah, I have a few steps behind. But okay, yes, right. Like what? How does that? Who's the market right now? Right? Who is the market? Where are wearables?
Yeah, I mean, listen, we have come so far. I am shocked at how mainstream some of these wearables have become.
Okay.
And to be completely honest, they have to become mainstream. They have to get to that place where people are going to want to buy them, because that is the only way that they're going to actually stick. And whether it takes a celebrity, and I have a lot of personal thoughts about the Kim Kardashian thing, but like, honestly, I don't care if that means that more people are talking about sleep and thinking about it. And then that leads them down this rabbit hole of like, oh my gosh, well, I didn't realize that my CGM data was also affecting my sleep. And then all of these things and everything combines. So I'm okay wherever people start, but there is going to be that entry point for someone. And there is going to be that one device or one idea, one problem that they have that they're trying to solve. And for me, it was sleep. And it sent me down this cascade of 3.5 years of trying every device out there. And to kind of come back to this idea, which I think this actually really seamlessly like comes back to the whole social media thing. I'm not on short form social media. And there's a good reason. I can't get my message across. I think there's a lot of people that are in the space that want more educational content. And that's where something like YouTube, that's where something like Skillshare, all these, like, there's so many outlets now. No one has an excuse. Everyone has a laptop and a camera and hopefully a nice microphone. And I just think that there is so much potential in giving people something more than a 30-second soundbite, because those days are done. They're gone. They want more relevant content and things that they can actually sink their teeth into, which is why I love what I do. And I love being like able to talk to people in the space and hear what they're doing too, because this is how we make a movement and a change happen. It doesn't just start, with a small, it does start with a small group of people, but like biohackers were considered weird a couple of years ago. I went to a conference and I was like, these are my people, but now it's like, everyone has a Biostrap or Whoop strap or a ring, and it's just so not a big deal anymore. And as much as I love to be like that special little star that like knows all the new things happening, I don't care, because if people are healthier, that's all that matters.
Yes. And that's where, the diffusion of innovation was interesting, because it seems like it always starts with this 2.5%. And I don't know where they got this number from, right? But they're called the innovators, the techies, right? Like you, right? Me, like the ones that are wearing all these funny straps all over and comparing it and sharing our story. And then it seems like it spreads over to the early adopters. And these early adopters, or they call them the visionaries, and that's 13.5%. Again, I don't know where they got that number from, but it seems like once a big enough group of those take on, it reaches this moment where all of a sudden the early majority, it crosses some magical chasm, and it just seems like common sense. Oh yeah, of course I've got a wearable. What about, why wouldn't you, right? Of course we have DVDs, right? Why are you still using cassette tapes? That's how old I am. So, so those are the things that it seems like are companies paying attention to where this is at, right? Yeah. And it seems like you guys are. So good. And maybe new entrepreneurs should too. That sounds
I also think like Dr. Licata, price is a huge factor too. The more that prices come down on things.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm sure I will let the company speak about that. But like, I know as a consumer, when things are affordable or in your range and your bracket, there is a tendency that you're more willing to try, even if you have a return policy, which every good company does sort of have a return policy. But like, if it's a good device and you think you're getting your valued money and spending your dollar on that thing and it's serving you, then I think people feel justified in having these things. Mm-hmm. But if something is overpriced and you're like, I don't know what it's going to do for me, that's where there's that gray line.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. That's wonderful. Any other thoughts? On that? Diffusion of innovation. Who's the market? Who's the target market right now? Social media. Anything else?
Guys, I'm sure you're all sick of hearing me, so you could just take me off, and I want to hear some of the other amazing people here.
I'm not.
I talk for a living. I'm good with not talking.
Well, again, I'll wait for anybody to jump on here and have anything else to add to this. But again, as entrepreneurs are starting out, I thought, Stephen, your point was well taken. What are the new platforms, right? Or I don't know, maybe that was Katie. What are the new platforms? What? Maybe it won't be Instagram soon. Maybe it's something else that I'm too old to know about. Molly, what are your thoughts?
I first want to comment, because just from what everyone else was saying, but I loved what they brought up about education, because even if you think of glucose data, it's like, I can understand what it means in my brain and you understand what it means in your brain, but how do we spread that information in a way that's transferable to, you know, the layperson that doesn't have a background in, you know, how the body operates? So that's especially what we're doing at Nutrasense as well. Is so if people have access to these continuous glucose monitors, and they're just going to continue to gain traction in, you know, anyone who's interested in health, maybe it's like, oh, I want to lose weight, or I want, you know, feel like I have these weird sensitivities or something going on, then it's just going to gain more traction. But what we're trying to do is, with dietitian support, and we're here to help people analyze their data, is just it's hopefully more profound and they actually know what's going on. Because I know, like, a lot of, I love that, you know, all this information is spreading, and I know a lot of the companies, they don't have people to help analyze that, and that education is so key, because again, we can think futuristically and have an understanding of how important this small little nuanced information is, but how are we just making sure that everyone knows that? So yeah, it's kind of like dumbing it down to a way that everyone can understand. And we, even from, you know, the growth that we've had, it's just like the most of the people that we had initially starting out were total biohackers. They listen to podcasts, they love all of this stuff, but now we're moving into entryway of, you know, more people are finding out about that. So how can we then, you know, provide, you know, better insight and help them reach whatever goal that they're trying to reach in the health world? So I love that whole idea. So
no, that's right on, Molly. And that, you know, that makes me think about, there's so many points in this arc, right? But like, we need good data. I've heard that from Katie. And then that data, we need good processing and good data scientists and translational, so that we can have information. And then that information needs to be able to be clear enough for the consumer to make a decision, right? Yeah, and then that decision has to lead to an action, and then the action has to then, you know, go to some result, so that we can get some clear data to then get some feedback, right? And that begins the feedback loop. Excuse me.
Totally. And even just thinking from, because we've worked with so many different people who have come on and used the glucose data, and it's just like, you might come on and you find out your glucose is terrible. It's just like, who knows if they may not be in the right place at that moment to fix make behavior modifications or lifestyle modifications, but that might come up in their mind like a year from now. And I have people come back a year later and like, okay, I'm ready now. So it depends on the individual and when they're ready to make actionable changes towards whatever it is that they want to do. But it's just, again, I think of my own, you know, personal responses to how, you know, if I eat like oatmeal, for example, I was eating that every day. And now I know that before eating that every single day, then, you know, as time progresses, that could lead into something that could, you know, promote more adverse health effects down the road. So now I know, and I then have the knowledge to make that like a more informed decision about, like, you know, what I want to do with my health. It's just like, it was a game changer for me. So
yes. And Stephen, and you're going to speak in, and I know that you guys have created an amazing ecosystem where it seems like a lot of those steps are already taken care of. Can you speak into that?
Sure. And I would, before I talk about that, just add to what Molly was saying. Yeah. I think the key is, how do we inspire people to make a change, right? I mean, simple example, you know, you have a patient in the doctor's office, they're perhaps way overweight. Doctor says you're overweight, you should eat less. Okay, there's going to be no change. Patient's going to go home and eat the same thing they're eating, right? So how do we have data which gives us actionable pieces of information that people can use to change their life? I think it's incumbent upon us then, how do we help motivate them to make and inspire them to make the change? And not just for a week, you know, but also make sure that we're interacting with them in 6 months from now in some way as a company to help them continue on that path. So Viome, we try to integrate that with multiple testing, adding gamification kind of things to the app. So we all have these apps, but how do we get people to come back to them? And I don't mean just from a selfish company point of view, but that's part of it. We want them to come back because maybe they'll buy some more products. But how do we have them come back to keep on learning, keep on being inspiring? And I think that's what all of us can be thinking more and more about.
Right, because ultimately it's a tool, right? And so you want them using the tool.
Right. I mean, if people use the tool more, that means that they're following the recommendations more, which we believe, therefore, their health will improve. Mm-hmm. If the health improves, then they are going to tell more people about what we're doing, right? And word of mouth. So the thing that we didn't mention before, we talked about Facebook and Instagram, and yes, these are communities for sure, and that's, I guess, the point of these kinds of things. But word of mouth, that's still a key basic way to grow a company. And you have to have a good product to use word of mouth. You don't have to have a good product to advertise on Facebook, right? You can make up whatever you want on Facebook. And Instagram, you can have whatever pretty picture you want on there about something, okay? But word of mouth, it has to be someone saying, hey, I did this. I followed, in Viome's case, I followed their recommendations, and I got the precision supplements that were made for me, and I had more energy, or I lost weight, or my gastrointestinal symptoms went away, or I was less depressed. And we say that about Nutrasense and et cetera, any of these companies. So that's the key. So I guess when I was thinking before, what is the new thing? I think a new thing is the old thing. It's back to the future, right? How do we get more word of mouth people?
Huh. Yeah,
I like that.
That's good. That's really good.
And how do you do that in scale? I guess the question is, how do you do that at scale? And I'm not a marketer, so I don't know. But that's the question, and that's what theoretically what Facebook tried to answer, or Instagram, or whatever. Usually you can do it at scale, but I think by doing it at scale, you've then lost what you started to try to do in the beginning. Yeah.
No, I think that's really key. Well, and it seems like back in 2001. There were so many tech startups and internet startups. Then by 2007-08, it seemed like a lot of them. It seemed like there was a big movement towards consolidation, and then it seemed like there were a lot that got left behind. And those that made it through this kind of consolidation phase seem to become the Googles and the Facebooks of the world. It seems like right now there appears to be it's a little bit of a Cambrian explosion. There's a lot happening. There's a lot of possibility. But as we probably can assume, there's already a beginning. There's a pulling and the consolidation happening again. Do you agree with that? Do you see that being relevant in 2022? Or disagree? And if so, why?
I disagree a little bit. I think the tools that now exist for the newer, smaller companies to thrive didn't exist in 2007, 2008 in some ways. So I don't think it'd be as easy for them to become irrelevant as maybe happened before, as bigger players become bigger. Mm-hmm. Now, there still would be this consolidation. There still would be companies getting bigger and bigger. But just think of, we still have a teeny bit of the market share, right? Mm-hmm. So this whole world we're talking about, okay, is still, I can't even imagine, 0.5% of the healthcare budget, right? So there's plenty of room for consolidation, for companies to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And that won't take away from the fact that there's still another 99% of the market available for everybody else. Wow. So I think we have the tools to reach people that we didn't have 15 years ago. Yeah. And they're only going to get more. I mean, right? Yeah. We're going to have I was just reading smart refrigerators. Amazon's going to have this refrigerator that senses what you're missing in your refrigerator, and then automatically puts your order in, to Whole Foods. And I joked at the company the other day, and obviously we'll be tied up with Amazon, so they'll only recommend order your foods that we recommend, right? But a lot more tools.
There's a lot more tools, though. A lot more tools. Well, that's encouraging. That's encouraging. Anyone else? What are your thoughts? Yeah, okay. Oh, so someone says, I finally got to look down here in the comments. Someone said they want Viome and Amazon integration, right? Maybe. Who knows what's happening in the back doors at Viome? Well, I think this is huge. I think that we've been able to identify some amazing trends. We have so soon. We have so many new startups that are popping up, especially here. Again, our audience is mainly this Pasadena corridor, and some of the explosions of new entrepreneurs, new grads, new institutions that have jumped in wholeheartedly to make things happen and begin to get Pasadena up on the world stage. And I think that everyone at Connect Week should be watching this, and I know they're going to be on the recordings. Any other closing thoughts? As we wrap this up? What would you like to leave either the new entrepreneurs of 2022 or the new grads looking to make the world a better place? What do you think? What would you like to leave us with? Samir, would you like to jump in first? Steven.
I'm not Samir.
I love you too. This is great.
I couldn't press it fast enough.
Right. I don't even know what to press.
Got it. You still
actually,
got it, Steven.
I don't even know how to raise my hand. Just quickly, 25, 30 years ago, when I founded my first company, which was 1986, right? So that's how many years? That's I don't know, 35 years ago, whatever it is. You couldn't be a college student and start a company.
Yeah.
And no one was giving money to 18-year-olds or 21-year-olds. To get money from a VC or someone, you had to have a company that was already making money, that was already in business for 5 years. Our first big funding was after we were in business 10 years probably, right? And already had sales of $40 million. So it's a different world today. So the entrepreneurs, people graduating from school, there's lots of money around for someone who's sharp and bright and has a new idea. So whether it's just angel money to start with, and parents and family and friends and stuff like that, or more. So I think that's very different today than it was before. So I just encourage people to commit to what you want to see change in the world, and then you can make it happen.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, to piggyback off of what Steven was saying, I think it's easier to start a company nowadays than ever. I think that's a good thing because you can take risks, and I think sometimes it's still scary to start a company, but I think it's just more forgiving. I think now more than ever, the tools are out there. It's less expensive to do those things. You can form a company within an hour. It's crazy. It's amazing how quickly you can do just from a spawn of an idea. And I think sometimes it's crazy. The thing is, like, sometimes you tell your friends your idea, they think you're crazy. That's just one endpoint, one decision, or one kind of opinion. And sometimes you got to do a little bit of crazy to really see it through. Who would have thought that something like, it's like, hey, I'm gonna have random people drive me around from an app, and then now that's Uber, or hey, I'm gonna stay at random people's houses, Airbnb, like this stuff is crazy,
Yeah.
but it's revolutionary, just the thought of that. So I think, don't be afraid of crazy. I think my thought.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like if you have like an intuitive sense about anything or a deep passion towards anything, and you have that entrepreneurial spirit in you, it's just again, what Samir was saying, like, people are going to think like maybe you're weird, or a lot of people don't have that inside of them. So just always just stick to that gut sense and just go after it, because that's what's going to promote and facilitate change in a way that, other people are just going to be the bystanders and sit around and watch it all happen. If you want to be the person that's promoting it all, then, just always go through with that. So
good. So good. Thank you.
And there's nothing wrong with pivoting. Pivoting is the coolest tool you can use with enough signals. People start a business, Netflix used to start mail DVDs, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, we've shifted into different business models. COVID has created new business models, and that's just that to me speaks really high volume. Trying to just because you might have had one idea, you can pivot. There's nothing wrong with that. So I think use the market, analyze the market, go with the trends, and use that as kind of like a kind of a litmus test. Is this product going to fit in this market? Because at the end of the day, it's product market fit that matters more than anything. The product will tell you if you need it. The market will tell you if it needs your product or not.
Yes.
But end of the day, passion will fuel all, but you do have to solve real problems, of course.
Yes. And COVID, Peloton being another example, right? They set out to make the perfect, stationary bicycle, and now they're a fitness platform company, right? I mean, who would have thought, right? So
absolutely.
So good. Know how to pivot. And Molly, Katie, any last words from your perspective, especially for the next wave of entrepreneurs are coming out? What are your thoughts?
Do I ever? I honestly agree with everybody, and I love this idea of being a go-getter. But guess what? If we want to see massive change, I got to go off what Dr. Barrie said. It's got to start at our medical institutions. So if you guys are entrepreneurs and you're I want to create change by incorporating all of these amazing tools into my actual doctor visit, we need to see more companies like Forward, Parsley Health, places where your data matters, and they are setting up with those tools. And I know that is a whole rabbit hole, and I'm sorry I waited for last minute,
yes.
But I think that is where the future of all of this is, because until people feel like they have their hand held through the first part of it and they don't have to do it all on their own, and they're actually working with somebody and who's in the who understands the data and who's in this type of work that can set you up with the things that are right for you. And this is also just a little plug to Wellness District LA, but they help you with figuring out the modalities that are going to be right for you, because maybe infrared sauna isn't for everyone. Maybe a cryotherapy session isn't going to be the right fit for you. Yeah. But there's so much out there. How do we even know where to start? Yeah. That's why I think the medical system has got to see a massive change. And that's where all of you guys who work at these companies are going to, that's going to be the explosion, that beautiful synergy between those two worlds.
Yeah.
Please make that happen in 2022. Come on.
So I'm hearing synergy, integration, partnership, maybe no longer the lone cowboy out there trying to do it themselves. Wonderful. What an important perspective and voice to that. Okay. Thank you for joining us here. We are going to include all of your information in the bios. Please, for everybody that's watching this now or later, especially throughout the rest of the week as you're catching up, please reach out to them. These are wonderful companies, wonderful voices, wonderful experts, and probably with a lot more experience than maybe some others on the rest of this week. So they know what it's like. So thank you for joining us here. I'm also going to I'm going to speak to a few of the talks coming in tomorrow. The next day, we've got breaking the Series A barrier, what investors are looking for. Quantum computing is near. Are you prepared? Right. So we've got a lot of things going on, talking about time for a reset, organizational structures, cyber attacks, virtual guided NASA JPL tours. I mean, there is a lot going on, but please rewatch this. This is going to be so important. Again, thank you all for joining us. Again, please, we're so grateful for you. If there's anything else that we could do, please just share it afterwards, and we'll include all of the links in the notes in the show notes. Thanks again.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.